In this tutorial, we will start to learn all about the Jakarta JSP expression language. We will look at version 3, since that is the version that matches the Jakarta Java Enterprise Edition 8, and it can be run on Tomcat 9 with OpenJDK 11. And of course, this is the technology we will be using in our example code. Look at the key points in our tutorial. We will introduce the Jakarta expression language. We will dig into the official documentation to understand it better. And we'll start off by looking at the specifics of evaluation expressions. And we'll look at some examples in our code. Now we'll go directly to our course documentation and we select part 1 in order to properly separate the front-end presentation layer from the back-end layer. It is strongly discouraged to use embedded Java. And for presentation layer logic such as iterating through a list, we will be using the expression language. So let's look at the official documentation and we follow the link to the specification document. And we go back and look at our official Maven coordinates for version 3 of the expression language. Here it is. And we'll start off by looking at evaluation expressions in the documentation. We see it's a pretty substantial document. So we'll go back and we look at our extract. We use this to construct an immediate evaluation and this for a deferred evaluation, which means it is not evaluated until its value is needed by the system, or else it is compiled and executed when the JSP is executed. And something to take note of, because we are going to use JavaScript frameworks like jQuery, we will have to use the HTML escape or a property group. And here is an example for where you can place your expressions. Basically, you can place your expressions anywhere except inside a directive, such as the page directive. You can also put your expressions inside HTML and JSP tags for assigning attribute values, such as text colors, fonts, and you can use the inside of inline JavaScript and cascading style sheets. Now we're getting ready to write our expression language. So first we look at the reserved words. This is essentially the same as in Java, so you can't use that as variables. We'll go back and we'll look at literal expressions. Here is examples of string and Boolean display and how to use the two different ways, the $sign or the pound sign. Also more on the escape characters and composite expressions. There is also a section on operator precedence inside of expression language. And finally, literal values, Boolean, integer, floating point, string, and the null value. Now back in Eclipse, and the first thing we'll look at is the pom.xml. And we've previously looked at a bunch of Stack Overflow answers that's relevant to the version of the JavaX servlet that we need to import. And now we'll look at the difference between Tomcat 9 and Tomcat 10 in another good Stack Overflow answer. Here is the question: how to properly configure Jakarta Enterprise libraries in the Maven form for Tomcat. The guy explains his problem. Here's a good answer here. It says, the problem is that you're using Tomcat 10 libraries and deploying it to Tomcat 9. So here is the explanation of the minimum requirements for Tomcat 9, which is what we will be using, and all the different versions. So expression language 3.0, and we see everything as Java X. And then when we move on to Tomcat 10 at a later stage, we see everything has been ported over to Jakarta. In other words, this is a big change and a big move over to the dependencies, and their expression language 4 has been used. Now we'll go back to Eclipse and look at how we've updated our JSP pages. We'll look at the registration form first, and we see we've replaced the username, the subject, and the body with the expression language output. In our fragment, we have the import of the ASTL4 library. We go to the view registration. We see we've added the expression language alongside the old embedded Java output. And we see that for the later part 2 and part 3, we will look at functions and formatting of the registration date, which is encapsulated here in the actual embedded Java code. Down here in the for list of attachment, at a later stage, we'll also look at how we can extract the file names with the expression language. And finally, let's look at list registrations. Here is an embedded value from Java. Here is some embedded username. And here is the display using expression language. Another one up here. And here we try and use this. But let's see if we run it, if we are actually successful. Run on server. Create registration. Let's view page source. And here we see that the expression language is used in the input form. So we'll submit, and we've duplicated our old embedded Java tags with the new expression language tags. And here we see that our expression language for the current date does not work. That's because it's a date function that we will leave for a later stage. We'll return to list registrations. We see our charity subject, charity name, and we see there's some outstanding issues that we will have to address. And that concludes this tutorial. I will see you in the next one.